Good afternoon. Glad you could join us again for our Strong and Sturdy podcast. Hope you're having a great day. It's been a little bit. We're at the beginning of the year, 2025. A little more than a week into week number 2. I hope you set some goals for the year and a direction. If you don't set anything, if you don't have a target, you're not going to hit it. And you're not going to hit, you can't hit nothing. And just so set up a goal, set up a target. And I hope you came off the other year accomplishing the goals and targets that you had set at the beginning of the year. And I got to go out this morning, got a call from one of our church members, and that one of our clients locked their keys in the car. And so I picked up some of the tools that we had for that purpose and took them over there and opened her car. And then I afterward got to lead her to Christ. And what a wonderful time that was. And I got a text later from one of our church members that said she was so excited and happy. And that's just a wonderful thing. Using the opportunities that come across your path to win people to Christ. Now, I'm going to bring to you a verse this afternoon. Nehemiah chapter 7, verse 1. Now it came to pass when the wall was built and I had set up the doors and the porters and the singers and the Levites were appointed, that I gave my brother Hanani and Hananiah, the ruler of the palace, charge over Jerusalem, for he was a faithful man and feared God above many. The reason why he chose his brothers for 2 reasons. Number 1, he was a faithful man. 2, he feared God. And these are most important if God is going to use you. If the pastor is going to use you, you have to be faithful. You're going to have to fear God. God is looking for people to use. The Bible says in Ezekiel, and I looked for a man among them who would make up the hedge, who would stand in the gap, but I found none. And it's important that we decide to stand in the gap, that we decide to be faithful. Proverbs says, a faithful man shall abound with blessings. And that blessings is plural. It's not one, it's many. And as a person is faithful, God provides blessings. And I believe here, God provided through Nehemiah, God provided, Hanani through Nehemiah, the charge over Jerusalem. Because first, he was faithful. A faithful man shall abound with blessings. Some thoughts on being faithful this afternoon. You must be there. You gotta be there. When the doors are open, you gotta be in your place. It's hard to use something, if not near impossible to use somebody who's not there. Who we don't know is going to show up. I wonder if so-and-so is going to be in church today. I wonder if so-and-so is going to be at sowing today. I wonder if so-and-so is going to show up to work today. God is going to use you. You got to show up. You got to be there. Next, you got to be dependable. You got to be reliable. And people are going to depend on you. If they're going to choose to depend on you, they got to know that you're there. They can't depend on somebody who's going to flake out down the road or who is unreliable, doesn't know if they're going to wake up in the morning, doesn't know if they're going to get there on time, doesn't know if they're going to be in their place. We can't use that. We need people for our junior church. We need people for Sunday school teachers. We need people that are ushers. We need people that are willing to clean. We need people that are willing to do things for the work of God, but they got to be dependable. You got to be there. You got to be reliable. You got to decide just to do right, just to be there. You got to be consistent. Time and time again, I see people that lack consistency. They'll come to services for a little bit, then they'll stop. Then they'll start again, then they'll stop. Then they'll come a couple others, then they'll stop. They're just inconsistent. And the same thing goes to their walk with God. They read the Bible for a little bit and they'll stop. They'll pray for a little bit, they'll stop. Then they'll start up again, they'll stop. They'll start, they'll stop. They're inconsistent. And friend, God wants to use you, but you got to be consistent. You got to have that consistent walk with God, that consistent church attendance, that consistent tithe, that consistent giving, that consistent direction when it comes to the things of God, to just be consistent, time in and time out. And it's called being faithful. There is a call that you must be present for. Hanani was present for that call. Well, what was the call? To be in charge. Yeah, a ruler over Jerusalem. That was his charge. from Nehemiah, his brother. But he was there. He already was faithful. He didn't start being faithful when he got the call. He didn't say, well, I'll begin to be faithful when I am in charge over Jerusalem. No, it's not how it works. He said, I'm going to be faithful now, so down the road, I can be used to be in charge of Jerusalem. Nehemiah wasn't looking for the ones to say, I wonder who's not faithful so we can put them in charge so they will be faithful. That's not how it works. That's not how God works. God says, you prove your faithfulness, we'll put you in a position. And that's why for Sunday school teachers, when they prove their faithfulness, we can put them to be a Sunday school teacher. When they prove their faithfulness, they can be a worker. When they prove their faithfulness, they can do things in the church. Hananiah was faithful before he called. And number 2, he feared God. Man, if only a generation would fear God. God was number 1. He respected God in his choices. You must live life in respect of God and what he thinks. You're always looking, well, what does God say? What does God think about my choices? What does God think about my direction? What does God think about the way that I am going? And it's so important in our lives to have a fear of God. This is not being scared of him in a sense, but realizing he is great and he is wonderful and he does care what you think. He does care. You should care, what he thinks. It's a must when it comes to God using you. If you don't respect God, why would he use you? Same goes with the pastor. If you don't respect the pastor, the man of God that God has placed in your life, why would he put you in a position? My friend, you're going to have to understand that Hananiah, before he ever was chosen to be over Jerusalem, he already decided that he was going to fear God, that he was going to do what God needed him to do. That no matter what everybody else did, he had already made the choice that I'm going to fear God. God is number 1. God is at the top. And that's who I'm going to follow. And his brother maybe looked at him and said, man, I like that. I like the fact that you're faithful, that you've been faithful these many years. And now I'll use you. And I'm glad that you feared God. Your life has showed over the course of this period of time, whichever it was, that you fear God. That your life has been lived in respect to God and what he thinks. Not what I think, not how I want to dress, not how I want to think, not what I want to do in life, but what he wants. And he saw that even before he was ever given the opportunity to be in charge of Jerusalem, he had already taken up the mantle. He had already stood in the gap. He had already decided in his own mind and will, I'm going to be faithful. And regardless if he was in charge, I don't believe he was going towards to be in charge of Jerusalem was his goal. But it just so happens that God chooses faithful men. That God chooses men and women who fear him to do things for him. Not the unfaithful, not the ones who are inconsistent, not the ones who are in one day, out the next, up here, down there. No, those are consistent. They're faithful. They're doing what God wants them to do. That when the time comes, when God needs the person, that you're ready. When God needs you, will you be ready? Will you be faithful? Will you be consistent? Will you fear him? I hope you will this afternoon, and I hope you will when it comes to your life. I hope that's a blessing. I hope that's an encouragement to you. If we can be a help to you, let us know. Love to see you. Our next service this weekend is coming up, and soul winning on Saturday. Everything's on schedule. Nothing changes in the new year. Set goals and reach them. And that'll be a wonderful thing. Have a great day, and God bless.